Hi and welcome to PhD Career Stories. I'm Elisabeth Reithuber and I'm the host of today's episode. And I'm very happy to welcome today's guest, Martin Trinker. Martin is the director of the Business Development and Fundraising Unit at the Austrian Center of Industrial Biotechnology. Martin holds a PhD in biotechnology, but has also a background in economics. And today we will talk about how to identify a need and create your own position, because this is precisely what Martin has done. He has created the position he's holding today. This is really exciting, and I'm very glad, Martin, that you're here today, that you take your time and yeah, that you're willing to share your story with our listeners. So, welcome again. And I would like to directly dive into the topic and hand you the first question. How did you identify the need for the job that you're holding today?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure, and I'd like to share my story. So
Thank you
it
very
happened
much.
approximately 10 years ago. I switched from lab bank, because I was a senior postdoc back then, into the research management at ACIB. And ACIB, the Austrian Center of Industrial Biotechnology, back then was a kind of a fragmented unit because we had locations all over Austria and we came to be out of two predecessors and we just had to grow together. Our CEO identified the need for some high-level support for our scientists and thus created two positions for research managers, and I became one of them. I have to mention that back then ACIP was organized into 6 different research areas, and each research area had one area leader and an area manager. The area manager was most of the time a scientist who really helped the area leader in all kind of operative things. And the idea of our CEO was for the research manager to take over 3 areas and to bring them closer together. Because back then, if you had the area of biocatalysis and you had a discussion with a company partner, you always offered everything you could do in biocatalysis, but not something you could do in the microbiome research, not something you could do in the protein engineering research, maybe. And the research manager was intended to change all that. However, it became clear that the area leaders did not want to let go of their area managers. They were kind of friends also. They were used to this kind of support. And also, they didn't want to have someone who talked to the company partner and offered all different kinds of things. They want to have someone who offered only their kind of expertise. And that was a problem. And 1 year later, our CEO also realized that he just can't have 2 research managers plus 6 area managers. It was just too expensive. And that's something I really appreciate. He always was very honest and said, okay, guys, just listen to me. This doesn't work out as I've planned, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. We can change, we can adapt. Do you have any ideas of how you think your job could be in the future? And during the first year, I really learned a lot about ACIP, how ACIP works. And in my opinion, there was a kind of a weak spot because the science was really excellent. It has always been. But there was no single point of contact for company partners. Because if a company partner said, well, ACIP is great, I want to talk to them about what they could do for me, he would have to decide, would he go for the engineering team, bioprocessing unit, for the microbiome research, biocatalysis, whatever. And that was not good because he wanted to talk about everything ACIP could do and also to know what about the budget. If I do a project with you, how much would it cost? And how does, for example, some Austrian fundings, how does it work? So my idea was then to offer a kind of three-pronged approach. We could do business development, really approach proactively company partners for the whole of ACIP. We could also, in the fundraising, identify funding opportunities, be it international ones like EU projects, but also national ones, and also approach maybe private foundations to sponsor our research. And the third one was key account managing, where I really take care of our best clients, so to say, of those companies who do the most research work with us. And that's something that I developed as kind of a concept and proposed to our CEO. And he was really glad about that. And that was actually the point where I became business development manager. And yeah, funny story to tell why I became director of business development. I always said, okay, if I have more responsibility, if I do more, then I should get more salary. And he reminded me, our CEO, that we are a non-profit research institution, but we are flexible, we can adapt. So he didn't give me the salary, but he said, okay, if you want to have a fancy title, go for it. And back then, I wasn't sure how long I would stay at ACIB. Maybe it was just for another year. I didn't know. And I thought at my LinkedIn profile to have there this term of director of business development, it would sound really great. So that's why this title came to be.
It does indeed, actually. Yeah. But that's really exciting, and I find it also very courageous that you proposed this and that you, yeah, actually identified that this is what the institution needs actually to be profitable and to, yeah, be successful in the future. But so you have been a PhD, you have the background in life sciences. How could you master this the skills that you need for that? I mean, you need key account managing, you need fundraising. There is a lot of things that, yeah, that come with this position. How, for example, did a PhD support you in this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think the PhD is really essential because at ACIB we have such a lot of different kind of projects and I have to present them in a convincing way. And for that, I have to understand them. And the PhD gave me the opportunity to really understand the science behind because you can't sell what you can't understand, not properly. And so for me, it was really important. And the commercial background, it helped me because a lot of scientists, they are focused on the science only. And I think if you combine two different things, it's always of value. And for me, the commercial background was great because it gave me some kind of maybe more self-confidence, maybe a little bit more insight about what companies might need. Uh, so I was really happy that I could able to combine it. Plus, the commercial college in Austria takes 5 years instead of a normal school, which would have taken 4 years. So I was kind of glad that the one additional year was not wasted. Because back then I always thought commercial stuff is not something for me. I want to go into the natural science area. But then to combine those two was, yeah, great for me.
Okay, so you shortly touched upon that. You've been to a commercial college, so you got the commercial background in school. But now for our listeners that hold only a PhD, let's say, and have a natural science background, how important are those skills for the position you're holding today? And would you see any way to acquire those skills in an alternative way?
Yeah, of course. So I really think you must never stop learning. You always learn something new, and it's possible to just do it on the job, train on the job, and you will learn it by going along. Some colleagues of mine, they went for an official MBA, Master of Business Administration, where you get really insight into how the commercial context is important for your kind of work in the science area. And I, for example, later on, I just read MBA books. I did not the official program, but it really helped me to refresh what I've learned back then and to get an update. But I think it's always possible to learn something. And in my opinion, to learn the science stuff is much harder than to learn the economic stuff.
Okay, so there. Okay, that's interesting, and yeah, learning on the go and constantly is something anyway we need in today's society. Um, I was also thinking from our discussion we had previously. I know that you also have an entrepreneurial side. You've been you've pitched your ideas, and you also have this have this side in you. How did this help you to yeah, to identify the need to actually pitch a new position to make your institution grow, so to say?
Yeah, so it was also some kind of I don't know how to sell. I wished for not only to do also in the PhD to do excellent science. I also wanted to translate it into something, into a product, a process maybe. And I was really lucky because my PhD thesis was in combination with a company, DSM, and the project that I did back then, it was luckily some kind of success. So it offered me the opportunity to capitalize on that and to go for some awards. And it was really a great experience. And I always thought also back then how I could raise my value as an employee. And being awarded something, of course, looks good in the CV, as does some title do. So I always thought, okay, how could I make myself more interesting? And the entrepreneurial side was also, I had always ideas, and ideas you can use for a research project, you can use it for a company project, but you can also use it to found your own startup. And back then I had two ideas of how a startup could work and interesting scientific ideas. And I managed actually to get among the top three in two competitions back then, but I never actually did the startup. But I worked in a startup, and now at ACIB, because always the job is evolving, actually at ACIB I can now offer a breed initiative where startups are being fostered and promoted by ACIB. That's something that I also like to bring back. So the experience I have, bring it back now into my work, because I was also lucky. The business development over the years, it really developed. And of course, it doesn't matter what you do. Over time, you get better. You get more experience. You get more contacts. And it really helped that ACIB could grow.
I found really interesting is that you touch upon a very interesting topic here. The constant evolvement and that adaptation. So yeah, how do you actually keep this mindset of constant evolving adaptation to what the needs are? That's certainly very interesting.
Yeah, mindset is maybe a good idea. I always think, okay, how I want to go on with my life. And if you think, I think it's a good idea to think about how at an old age, maybe 80, 90, 100 years, you look back to your life and you maybe think, I wished I could have changed that. And now you're actually in a position to really change it. And I see it as that a job is not only something to make money with, it's actually a way to change the world. And I'm a very optimistic person, and I want the world to be a better place for my children, for everyone actually. And I think I can do it through my work, because if I'm more active, if I get more research projects, then there will be more R&D in the world, more results, more new products, more environmentally friendly processes. And that's something that I really live for. And I think, as maybe something for the viewers, I think it's really important to identify something that you love. Because if you do that, it's not really a job, it's like a hobby, but you get paid for it. So always find something that you love and also something that you're good at. If you can combine those two and then match it with the needs of the company, that's a win-win-win, because then the company has a very motivated employee who really likes the job and does everything to be better at it. And also learning doesn't feel like an obligation, it feels like an opportunity, because I have always been interested in science. But if you do one research project, you know everything about this one project. Now we have at the moment 70 research projects, and I am able to know a little bit about all of them. It's much more interesting, and I always love to talk about science. And the frustrating elements in the lab back then, they are gone. So I can really focus on the more interesting reading and talking about it stuff. And the real work is done by our scientists. And I really am grateful that they are doing it, and also grateful that I can talk about all this.
Now that sounds really lovely, and yeah, also beautiful to hear how excited you are about your job, and how you described learning to be opportunity to constantly evolve and adapt, and stay relevant in in today's world. So that's really really beautiful. Thanks a lot. Um, Maybe now that we had such a beautiful positive statement, is there anything that you would have wished to do differently, maybe that you say, okay, this would have been something that I would have liked to know earlier in this process? You had this perspective to, looking back when you're old, is there something you're looking back to now that, you say that this would have been something I would like to have to know earlier?
Maybe two things. The one thing is regarding mindset. I also think if things are in the past, it doesn't matter worry about them because they happened, and maybe it's great that they happened as they did, even though they might have turned out in a negative way, because after all, they shaped you. You became what you are because of all the things in the past. And I rather try not to think what I could have done better because, that's a thing of the past and you can't change it anyway. So I rather like to think about the future. However, if the question goes into that direction of what someone else in that field would like to know, maybe, then I think the first thing is be really proactive. Some in my position have the feeling, okay, like you are selling something to someone who doesn't really need it and who might be bothered by that. I think it's a different way. I'm working for a great research center, and the opportunity to do great research is super. I mean, it's really great. And if you go to a company and offer them what you can do, it's like you offer them an advantage. If you go in there with the mindset of, well, I just want to have your money, it doesn't work. But if you really think, if you really believe you are giving them a benefit by doing a research with you, that's a good thing. You should be convinced yourself before you convince someone else. And the other thing is, sometimes you just need persistence. If you talk to a company partner, you always have to think maybe he has a lot on his plate right now, or her plate, of course, and he receives a lot of emails, he has a lot of projects to take care of, and he might be interested, but he might not have the time to answer. But just go back to him in a nice way. After 2 weeks, I always have a reminder, ask again, hey, we had this discussion, what about it now? Did you have time to think about? Would you like to have more input? And that's not the only thing I remind. I have usually 3 to 4 reminders, and after the fourth reminder, he still does not respond. Okay, that's fine, but I'm not on a personal level. That's nothing bad. Okay, he has a lot of the things to do. That's fine. You should never think about having a professional rejection to have something to do with you personally. It's just that it's at that time it didn't work out, but it could maybe 1 year from now. And it's really important to build long-term relationships. Sometimes we had the case that we talked to a company and the first project with this company was 7 years later. And you also have to have a kind of frustration tolerance, because if you talk to a lot of companies say it's interesting, but they're not actually willing to give money yet at that stage. So you have to talk to 10 or 20 companies and to get one maybe little project at the beginning. And once the trust has been built, you can move on from there. You have a larger project, proof of concept, visibility, and maybe then a long-term relationship. But it takes time. So be prepared that you get some frustrating elements along the way, but it will work out to be fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's and I guess as PhDs we are used to frustration. Would you anyhow say, I mean, 7 years is a quite long stretch. Would you anyway say that that this PhD skill helped you in that, or what actually gave you this long breath, so to say, to keep those relationships going, to work further?
As I mentioned earlier, I think it's kind of the mindset. If I talk to someone, I really want to help this person. I want to help this company. And if, for example, there's nothing that we could do as a research center at the moment, maybe someone else could help it. Maybe someone else could fill their needs or help them with their challenges. And I always try to recommend someone else, maybe just a funding that they could do on their own, something to make it interesting. And it's not only something to build a relationship, it's really something, if she is willing to spend some time with me, I'd rather make it worth the while, so help them along. And over time, there are some networking events and you meet the same persons over and over. And if you continue to talk to them, they will be more forthcoming, more honest, and more open-minded over time. And thus, it can happen that also initially there was not really a project, but it could come 7 years later. And also, you should never give up. I once received an email from a student of the French island of La Réunion asking about a project. And I thought, well, a student of that island, that would never turn out to be a project, but I really wanted to help them. And over a few months, we developed some kind of something we could really do. And he then brought in his professor, and two projects, smaller projects, but nevertheless about, I don't know, I think 20 to 40,000 euro came out of it. So it was
Wow.
really, yeah, it helped me myself to know that even some kind of lucky shot is possible. And people are willing to do a lot for even lesser chances. So there's always a chance. You have to believe in it, because if you don't do it, the chance is zero. But that's the only thing where the chance is zero. As long as you try, there's still a possibility.
That's really beautiful. Thanks a lot, Martin. I think this is, yeah, a very, very great sentence to close our discussion, and yeah, to keep this inspiring spark. Thanks a lot. Is there anything you would like to share? I don't want to cut you off in case you had something more, but I find this yeah, a beautiful end, and yeah, thanks a lot, Martin, for sharing your story and your insights, and for this inspiring talk. Thanks also to you, listeners, for tuning in again. And yeah, stay connected with us via our social media channels. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And stay tuned, because there is some exciting podcasts and episodes coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.